The crystal towers of Prime caught the light of 3 distant suns and scattered it across the palace grounds like shattered diamonds. Daniel Cole stood at the window of his new quarters and watched the alien world stretch out before him. He had been on this planet for exactly 6 hours, and in 12 more hours he would be married to a queen he had never met. The Galactic Council had arranged everything. Earth needed allies and the Dominion needed a buffer against their enemies. A political marriage seemed like a simple solution to complicated problems. Daniel had been chosen because he fit the role perfectly. He was quiet. He was scholarly. He had spent years teaching languages at a university back on Earth. He was, by every measure the used, completely harmless. That was exactly what everyone wanted him to be. A chime sounded at his door, and Daniel turned to see a tall figure enter without waiting for permission. They were elegant creatures, standing nearly 7 feet tall with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. This one had 4 arms folded across his chest and eyes that held nothing but contempt. "I am High Advisor Ran," the alien said. His voice was smooth but cold. "I serve Queen Ra. I am here to prepare you for the ceremony." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for taking the time. I know this arrangement was not your choice." Rand studied him for a long moment. "You are correct. I advised against this alliance. Humans are short-lived and fragile. Your species has barely learned to travel between stars. You have nothing to offer the Dominion except your location in the galaxy." Daniel said nothing. He simply waited. "But the Queen has decided," Rand continued, "and so you will become her consort. You will attend ceremonies. You will stand beside her at formal events. You will smile and be silent and stay out of the way. Do you understand?" "I understand," Daniel said. The High Advisor seemed satisfied with this answer. He explained the ceremony in precise detail, the words Daniel would need to speak, the gestures he would need to make. Daniel listened carefully and repeated everything back without error. This seemed to surprise Rand slightly, but the advisor said nothing about it. When the time came, Daniel dressed in the formal robes that had been provided for him. They were beautiful, woven from fabric that seemed to glow with inner light. He walked through corridors of crystal and living stone, following guards who never once looked at him directly. To them, he was already invisible, just another political tool being moved into position. The throne room was vast beyond human scale. Thousands of nobles filled the galleries, their iridescent skin creating a sea of shifting colors. At the far end of the room, on a throne carved from a single massive crystal, sat Queen Ra. Daniel had seen images of her during his preparation, but they had not captured her presence. She was tall even by standards, and she carried herself with the absolute confidence of someone who had never once doubted her own power. Her 4 arms were adorned with bands of precious metal, and her eyes were the deep purple of a dying star. She watched Daniel approach with open curiosity. He could feel her measuring him, calculating his worth. He knew what she would see: a small, soft creature from a primitive world, a political necessity wrapped in human skin. He stopped before her throne and performed the ritual greeting exactly as Ran had taught him. Every word was perfect. Every gesture was precise. Queen Ra rose from her throne and descended the steps to stand before him. She was so tall that Daniel had to crane his neck to meet her eyes. "You are the human they have sent me," she said. Her voice was musical, each word carrying harmonics that human throats could never produce. "I am Daniel Cole, your majesty. I am honored to serve as a bridge between our peoples." "A bridge," she repeated. The word seemed to amuse her. "Yes, that is a pleasant way to describe what you are." She circled him slowly, examining him from every angle. "You are smaller than I expected, and softer. Do all humans look so fragile?" "Many of us, your majesty. We are not built for strength like the—" "No," she agreed. "You are not." She returned to face him directly. "But you have other uses, I suppose. Your species has proven surprisingly difficult to conquer. They have tried 3 times and failed each time. This makes you valuable as allies, even if I cannot understand why." The ceremony proceeded according to ancient tradition. Words were spoken in languages Daniel had studied for months. Bonds were declared before witnesses. When it was finished, Daniel Cole was officially the consort of Queen Ra, ruler of the Dominion. The celebration lasted for hours. Daniel stood beside the Queen's throne, smiling politely at nobles who barely acknowledged his existence. He listened to conversations that they assumed he could not follow because they spoke too quickly for human ears. He watched the political currents of the court flow around him. And he noticed things. He noticed how certain nobles clustered together and fell silent when others approached. He noticed the meaningful glances exchanged between a group of guards and a figure in the shadows. He noticed how Prince Ran, the Queen's younger brother, watched his sister with something that looked very much like hatred. Daniel filed these observations away in his memory. He smiled and nodded and played the role of the harmless human husband. When nobles spoke to him slowly and loudly as if he were a child, he responded with gentle confusion. When guards joked about him in their rapid dialect, assuming he could not understand, he gave no sign that he caught every word. Late in the evening, as the celebration wound down, Queen Ra turned to him with something almost like interest in her eyes. "You have been very quiet tonight, human. I did not wish to embarrass you with my ignorance, Your Majesty. Your court is very sophisticated. I have much to learn." She tilted her head, studying him. "Perhaps you are wiser than you appear, or perhaps you are simply afraid. Either way, you have behaved acceptably. You may return to your quarters." Daniel bowed and left the throne room. As he walked back through the crystal corridors, he passed a group of guards who did not bother to lower their voices. "The human looks like a pet," one said. "The Queen keeps him as an amusement." "Let her have her toy," another replied. "He will be dead of old age before she even notices he was here." Daniel kept walking. He did not react. He simply added their faces to his mental list of people who had underestimated him. In his quarters, he secured the door and checked the room for surveillance devices. He found 3 and left them all in place. Then he sat by the window and looked out at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, enemies were moving against this court. He could feel it in the tension beneath the surface, in the glances and whispers he had collected throughout the evening. Something was wrong in the Dominion, and no one seemed to realize it. No one except the harmless human husband, who everyone had already forgotten to watch. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and Daniel Cole had become part of the furniture. The nobles of the court walked past him without seeing him. Guards spoke freely in his presence. Servants treated him like a curious pet that had wandered into the palace and been allowed to stay. It was exactly what he needed. Every morning, Daniel attended the Queen in her public audiences. He sat in a small chair beside her throne, positioned low enough to remind everyone of his inferior status. He smiled at visiting dignitaries and nodded along to conversations he supposedly could not follow. And all the while, he watched and listened and remembered. Queen Ra had grown accustomed to his presence. She no longer seemed to notice him at all, which suited Daniel perfectly. But lately, small things had begun to change. Sometimes she would glance at him during a particularly complicated negotiation, as if checking to see his reaction. Sometimes she would ask his opinion on minor matters, though she rarely followed his suggestions. "You spend a great deal of time in the archives," she said one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. The plants here were nothing like those on Earth, but Daniel had learned to appreciate their strange beauty. "I am trying to understand your history, Your Majesty. A good consort should know the traditions of his queen's people. Most would simply ask a servant to explain. I prefer to learn for myself. Books do not lie or simplify for convenience." She made a sound that might have been approval. "You are more curious than I expected. When they first brought you to me, I thought you would spend your days eating and sleeping like a satisfied animal. I hope I have not disappointed you." "Not yet." She paused beside a fountain that sprayed water in colors Daniel had no names for. "Tell me, human, what have you learned from your reading?" Daniel considered his words carefully. "I have learned that the Dominion has many enemies. The collective presses against your borders constantly. Other species resent your power and wait for signs of weakness. And within your own court, there are those who believe the alliance with Earth was a mistake." The Queen's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened slightly. "You see clearly for someone who spends his time with old books." "Books teach us to recognize patterns, Your Majesty. The patterns I see in your court are troubling." "And what would you have me do about these patterns?" "I would never presume to advise you. I am simply a harmless human who reads too much." She studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps you are not quite as simple as you pretend to be, Daniel Cole." He met her gaze and smiled softly. "Perhaps none of us are, Your Majesty." The next day, Daniel met with Ambassador Lena Park in her office at the Human Embassy. The ambassador was a sharp woman in her 50s who had spent her career navigating alien politics. She looked tired but alert as Daniel took a seat across from her desk. "You have been busy," she said. "My sources tell me you have been asking questions in the archives about the royal succession." "I have been researching history. The succession laws are part of that history." "And the communications logs you requested access to. Those are also history." Daniel did not deny it. "I believe Prince Ran is planning something. He has been meeting secretly with individuals I cannot identify. Some of them are not." The ambassador leaned forward. "What kind of individuals?" "I believe they are. I have seen their ships landing at a private estate outside the capital. The estate belongs to a noble who is close to the prince." Lena Park was quiet for a moment. "This is a serious accusation. If you are wrong, it could damage the alliance. If you are right, it could mean war." "I am not wrong." "You sound very certain for a linguistics professor." Daniel held her gaze. "Some of us are more than our official files suggest, Ambassador. I believe you know that already." She smiled thinly. "I have suspected for some time that Anthropic chose you for reasons beyond your academic credentials. Your service record has some interesting gaps that no amount of bureaucratic confusion can fully explain. I spent 12 years doing work that does not appear in any record. When I retired from that life, I thought I would never return to it. But the skills remain, even when we wish they did not. And now those skills are telling you that the Queen is in danger." "Yes, the Unity Festival is in 2 weeks. Thousands of delegates from across the galaxy will attend. It would be the perfect moment to strike." The ambassador stood and walked to the window. Outside, the crystal towers of Prime gleamed in the afternoon light. "What do you need?" "I need access to Captain and her security team. I need them to trust me and follow my lead when the time comes. And I need you to keep this conversation between us. If the prince suspects we are watching him, he will accelerate his plans." "You are asking me to authorize a covert operation on foreign soil without informing the Queen." "I am asking you to help me save her life." Lena Park turned back to face him. "Do it. But Daniel, if this goes wrong, I will deny any knowledge of your activities. You will be alone." "I have been alone before." He left the embassy and walked back toward the palace through the busy streets of the capital. The moved around him without interest, just another small human lost in their magnificent city. He passed a group of Prince Rand's personal guards and caught fragments of their conversation. "The shipment arrives tonight. The festival preparations will cover the movement." "And the Queen suspects nothing." "How could she? She is too busy playing with her human pet to notice what happens under her own roof." Daniel kept walking, his expression blank, his pace unchanged. Inside, he was already calculating. 2 weeks until the festival, perhaps less if they suspected a leak. He would need to move carefully and quickly. That night he stood at his window again and watched the 3 moons of Prime rise over the crystal towers. Somewhere in this palace, enemies were preparing to destroy everything the queen had built. They thought they were safe because no one was watching. They thought the harmless human husband was too stupid and weak to matter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But not yet, not until the moment was right. Daniel Cole had spent 12 years learning patience. He had learned that the deadliest weapon was not speed or strength, but timing. He had learned to wait in the shadows until his enemies had committed themselves fully, until there was no possibility of retreat. The prince would make his move at the Unity Festival, and when he did, Daniel would be ready. He touched the hidden compartment in his sleeve, where a compact plasma pistol rested against his skin. He had carried it since his first day on Prime, waiting for the moment he might need it. That moment was coming soon. The night before the Unity Festival, Daniel Cole stood in a darkened storage room in the lower levels of the palace. Captain faced him with her arms crossed and her expression hard. She was a soldier through and through, and she did not like operating in shadows. "You are telling me that you knew about this threat for months and said nothing to my team," she said. "I needed proof before I could act. Now I have it." "And what exactly is this proof?" Daniel handed her a data chip. Communications between Prince Ran and General of the Collective. Shipping manifests showing weapons being smuggled into the palace through the festival supply deliveries. A list of guards who have sworn loyalty to the prince over the queen. Inserted the chip into her tablet and scrolled through the information. Her expression grew darker with each file. "This is enough to execute the prince 10 times over. Why have you not shown this to the queen?" "Because the moment I do, the prince will know he has been discovered. He has spies everywhere. He will either flee or accelerate his plans. Either way, we lose our chance to capture everyone involved." "So what is your plan?" "We let the festival begin. We position your team at every critical point. When the assassins make their move, we take them all at once. The prince, the agents, every conspirator in a single operation." Studied him carefully. "Ambassador Park told me you were more than you appeared. She said you had experience with this kind of work, but she would not tell me the details." "The details are classified above your clearance level, Captain. Above mine too, technically. What matters is that I know how to do this, and I need your team to follow my lead." "My team answers to me." "Then I need you to trust me." She was silent for a long moment. "I have read your file, the official one. It says you taught languages for 15 years and then volunteered for diplomatic service. It says nothing about tactical training or combat experience." "Files can be incomplete." "They can also be." She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "Who are you really, Daniel Cole?" He considered lying. It would be easier. But tomorrow might bring death, and deserved the truth if she was going to risk her life on his word. "I spent 12 years in a unit that does not officially exist. We handled problems that could not be solved through normal channels. Hostage rescue, counterterrorism, removal of threats to Earth's security. When I left, I thought I was done with that life forever." "What changed?" "The Galactic Council needed someone to marry an alien queen. Someone who seemed harmless enough to be accepted. Someone who could watch and listen and wait. I was the perfect candidate because everyone believed I was exactly what my file said." Let out a slow breath. "So this whole time, you have been running an intelligence operation from inside the Queen's bedroom." "From inside the Queen's court. We have separate quarters. They are not interested in physical relationships with other species." "Small mercies." She looked at the data on her tablet again. "All right, I believe you. What do you need from my team?" They spent the next 2 hours going over the plan. Would position her people at the main entrances, the service corridors, and the galleries overlooking the ceremony hall. Daniel would remain beside the queen as always, watching for the signal that would begin the assassination attempt. "What happens if something goes wrong?" asked. "What if they move before we are ready?" "Then I handle it myself. Alone against trained assassins. I have done it before." She shook her head slowly. "You really are not what you appear to be." "None of us are, Captain. We all wear masks to survive. Some of us just wear them better than others." He returned to his quarters as the first sun began to rise over the palace. He had barely slept in days, but he felt sharply alert. Tomorrow would bring answers one way or another. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Queen Ra standing outside, alone and without her usual guards. This had never happened before. "Your Majesty, is something wrong?" She entered without waiting for an invitation and closed the door behind her. "You have been behaving strangely these past weeks. You barely sleep. You disappear for hours at a time. When you are present, you seem distracted, as if your mind is somewhere else entirely. I apologize if I have given offense. The preparations for the festival have kept me busy." "Do not lie to me, Daniel Cole." Her voice was soft but carried an edge of steel. "I have ruled this dominion for 40 years. I know when someone is hiding something." He said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. "I also know when someone is trying to protect me." She moved closer, her purple eyes holding his gaze. "My advisors think you are a fool. My guards think you are a pet. My brother thinks you are beneath notice. But I have been watching you, and I see something different." "What do you see, Your Majesty?" "I see a man who pretends to be less than he is. I see someone who listens when others think he cannot hear. I see patience and intelligence hidden behind a mask of foolishness." She reached out with one of her 4 hands and touched his face gently. "I do not know what you are planning, but I know it is meant to help me. So I will ask you directly. Is my life in danger?" Daniel felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could tell her everything. He could warn her about her brother and the assassination plot. But if he did, she would act immediately, and the conspirators would scatter like leaves in a storm. "I cannot tell you everything," he said finally. "Not yet, but I swear to you that I will let no harm come to you tomorrow. Whatever happens, I will protect you." "Why, we are strangers bound by politics. You owe me nothing. I have spent 3 months in your court. I have watched you rule with wisdom and strength. I have seen you balance 100 competing interests while keeping your people safe. You deserve better than the fate your enemies have planned for you." She studied him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. "You are a strange creature, Daniel Cole. I think I have badly underestimated you." "That was the intention, Your Majesty." A smile ghosted across her features. "Then let us see what happens when the mask finally falls." She left without another word. Daniel watched the door close behind her and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Tomorrow would change everything. The Queen suspected something, but she was willing to trust him. He only hoped that trust would survive when she learned the full truth of what he was. He checked his weapon one final time. The plasma pistol was fully charged and ready. It felt strange and familiar in his hand, like meeting an old friend after years apart. Tomorrow he would either save the Queen or die trying. There was no third option. There never had been. The Unity Festival brought thousands of beings to the great ceremony hall of Prime. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the galleries, their various forms creating a tapestry of alien shapes and colors. The air hummed with translator devices working overtime to convert dozens of languages into comprehensible speech. Daniel Cole stood in his usual place beside the Queen's throne, wearing the formal robes of a royal consort. He smiled politely at passing dignitaries and nodded respectfully at those who bothered to acknowledge him. To anyone watching, he was exactly what he had always been, the harmless human husband, decorative and forgettable. but his eyes never stopped moving. He spotted Captain near the main entrance, dressed as a servant and carrying a tray of drinks. Her team was scattered throughout the hall in similar disguises. They were ready. The only question was when the attack would come. Queen Ra rose from her throne and walked to the edge of the raised platform where she would address the assembly. Her brother, Prince Ran, stood among the nobles below, his expression carefully neutral. Daniel watched him without appearing to watch, tracking every small movement. "Distinguished guests," the Queen began, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. "We gather today to celebrate the bonds that unite our peoples. The alliance between the Dominion and the human represents a new chapter in galactic cooperation." Daniel saw it then. A slight nod from the prince, a ripple of movement among certain figures in the crowd. The serving staff was repositioning, and not all of them were carrying food. He touched the communicator hidden in his collar. "They are moving, east side of the hall disguised as servers. I see them, my team is ready. Wait for my signal, we need to catch them in the act." The Queen continued her speech, unaware of the danger closing in around her. Daniel counted the assassins, 3 on the east side, 2 more working their way through the crowd from the west, and another positioned near the emergency exit. 6 in total, all carrying what looked like serving implements but were almost certainly weapons. Prince Ran was edging toward the side entrance, preparing to disappear before the violence began. He thought he was being subtle, but Daniel had been watching him for months. The assassins were getting closer, 20 meters, 15, 10. The Queen's guards, loyal to the prince without knowing it, were subtly moving out of position. In moments, there would be a clear path between the killers and their target. 5 meters. Daniel made his decision. He stepped forward, directly into the path of the lead assassin. The figure was tall and gray-skinned, trying to hide its distinctive features beneath a server's hood. Its eyes widened when Daniel blocked its way. "Excuse me," Daniel said loudly. "I believe you have dropped something." The assassin hesitated, confused by this unexpected interruption. That hesitation was all Daniel needed. He drew his plasma pistol from the hidden compartment in his sleeve. The weapon had been with him for 3 months, carried every day, waiting for exactly this moment. It felt like an extension of his own hand as he raised it and fired. The first shot took the lead assassin in the chest before anyone could react. The collapsed, its disguise falling away to reveal the combat armor beneath. Screams erupted throughout the hall. Guests scrambled for cover as Daniel moved through the chaos with deadly precision. The second assassin raised a weapon, but Daniel was faster. 2 shots dropped before it could fire. The third assassin tried to rush the Queen directly, abandoning subtlety for a desperate final charge. Daniel put himself between the killer and his target. Their weapons fired at the same moment. Daniel felt heat scorch past his shoulder as his own shot found its mark. 3 down, 3 more still moving. And now, Captain and her team burst into action. The disguised soldiers revealed their weapons and closed in on the remaining assassins. The sound of plasma fire filled the air as the security team engaged the enemy. Daniel did not pause to watch. Prince Ran was running for the exit, his carefully planned coup collapsing around him. Daniel pursued, pushing through the panicked crowd, his pistol still ready in his hand. The prince reached the door and found it blocked by 2 of soldiers. He spun back and found himself facing Daniel. "You ran spat. You were supposed to be nothing, a pet, a decoration." "I get that a lot," Daniel said. The prince reached for a weapon concealed in his robes. Daniel shot it out of his hand before he could draw. Rand screamed as the plasma burned his fingers. "Prince Rand," Daniel said calmly, "you are under arrest for treason and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent, though I doubt that will help you much." The soldiers took the prince into custody as Daniel turned back toward the ceremony hall. The fighting was over. All 6 assassins were down, and his team was securing the perimeter. The queen stood exactly where he had left her, surrounded by her loyal guards. But she was not looking at them. She was looking at Daniel with an expression he could not quite read. The entire hall had fallen silent. Thousands of eyes from 100 worlds watched as Daniel Cole, the harmless human husband, walked back through the chaos with a smoking weapon in his hand and not a trace of fear on his face. High Advisor Rand stepped forward, his face pale with shock. "How is this possible? You were vetted. You were. The Human Intelligence Services confirmed you were harmless." "They confirmed what I wanted them to confirm," Daniel said. "What everyone wanted to believe. The harmless human, the foolish pet. It was a useful fiction." He stopped before the queen and lowered his weapon. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You lied to me," Queen Ra said finally. Her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it that might have been pain or might have been fury. "I protected you," Daniel replied. "Every day for 3 months, I protected you from enemies you did not know you had. My methods were deceptive, but my purpose was always the same." "And what purpose was that?" "To make sure you lived to see another sunrise. Whatever else you think of me, that has always been the truth." The queen looked at him for another long moment. Then she turned to address the stunned assembly, her voice ringing out across the silent hall. "It seems we have all learned something today about the nature of humanity. Let this be a lesson to our enemies. Earth sends no one by accident. Even their scholars are warriors in disguise." She looked back at Daniel with something new in her eyes, something that might, eventually, become trust. "Come, husband, we have much to discuss." The royal chambers were silent except for the soft hum of the atmospheric systems. Outside the windows, the 3 moons of Prime hung low on the horizon, their light casting long shadows across the crystal floor. Queen Ra stood with her back to Daniel, her 4 arms folded tightly across her chest. "Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning, no more lies." Daniel stood by the door, his weapons removed and his hands visible. He owed her this much. He owed her the truth. "My name is Daniel Cole. That part was real, but I was never just a linguistics professor. I spent 12 years working for a division of Earth's military that handles problems too sensitive for official channels. Hostage situations, enemy agents, threats that required permanent solutions." "You were a killer." "I was a soldier. Sometimes that meant killing. Sometimes it meant something else. I did what I was ordered to do because I believed it was necessary." The queen turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp and searching. "And then you retired to teach languages at a university." "I thought I was done. I wanted to be done. But when the Galactic Council arranged our marriage, Earth's intelligence services saw an opportunity. They needed someone inside your court who could watch and listen without being suspected. My background made me perfect for the role. Because everyone would believe you were harmless." "Yes." She moved closer, her tall form casting a shadow over him. "You have been spying on my court for 3 months, gathering information, reporting to your government." "I have been gathering information, but I never reported anything that would harm you or the Alliance. My mission was to protect you, not to betray you." "How can I believe that? How can I trust anything you say now?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. "You cannot. Trust is earned through actions, not words. All I can tell you is what I did and why I did it. Your brother was planning to kill you and take your throne. He had allied himself with the Collective and was preparing to deliver the entire Dominion into their hands. I stopped him. Everything else you can judge for yourself." Queen Ra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Rand has been interrogating the conspirators. The evidence you gathered was accurate. My brother had been planning this for years. He hated the alliance with Earth because he thought humans were beneath us. He thought I was weak for accepting you as a consort." He was wrong. Yes, he was. She turned and walked to the window, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. I have ruled this dominion for 40 years. I have faced assassination attempts before. I have dealt with traitors and enemies and threats from a dozen different species. But I never saw this coming. My own brother. The people closest to us are often the hardest to see clearly. And the strangers we dismiss are sometimes the ones who save us. She glanced back at him. You could have revealed yourself at any time. You could have warned me about Ran weeks ago and let my guards handle the rest. Why did you wait? Because I needed to capture all of them. If I had moved too early, the other conspirators would have escaped. The agents would have returned to their masters with intelligence about our defenses. The threat would have continued. I had to let them commit to their plan before I could stop it completely. A patient hunter waits for the prey to enter the trap before springing it. Something like that. The queen turned back to face him fully. What happens now, Daniel Cole? You have saved my life and my throne. You have exposed a conspiracy that threatened everything I have built. But you have also deceived me from the moment we met. Where do we go from here? Daniel had been asking himself the same question since the fighting ended. He had a dozen possible answers prepared, diplomatic phrases and careful suggestions that would serve both their interests. But looking at her now, he found himself speaking a simpler truth. I can leave. Earth would recall me if you requested it. The alliance would survive. You could find another consort, one who is actually what he claims to be. Is that what you want? No, but what I want does not matter. You are the queen. This is your decision. She studied him for a long moment. When I agreed to this marriage, I expected nothing from you. You were a political tool, a symbol of cooperation between our peoples. I never thought I would feel anything for you beyond mild curiosity. And now I find that I have come to rely on your presence, your quiet observation, your strange human perspective on my court. When I saw you draw that weapon and stand between me and death, I realized something. What? That I do not want you to leave. She moved closer, and for the first time since he had known her, she seemed almost uncertain. I want to understand who you really are, not the mask you wore for the court, not the spy hiding in plain sight, the real Daniel Cole. The real Daniel Cole is a complicated man. He has done things he is not proud of. He has seen things that still wake him in the night. He is not sure he deserves the kind of trust you are offering. Then we are well matched. I have ruled an empire for 40 years. I have made decisions that cost lives. I have sacrificed individuals for the good of my people. Neither of us is innocent, Daniel. Perhaps that is why we understand each other. She extended one of her 4 hands toward him. After a moment of hesitation, he took it. Her skin was cool and smooth, so different from human skin, yet somehow familiar. Stay, she said, not as a spy or a political tool. Stay as my partner, my equal. Help me build something real from this arrangement that was supposed to be nothing but theater. The court will never accept it. Your people will never trust me now that they know what I am. Then we will change their minds, together. She smiled, and it transformed her face into something almost warm. You have already shown them that humans are not what they assumed. Now show them what else you can be. The next morning, Queen Ra addressed her court with Daniel standing beside her. Not in the small chair below the throne, but on the platform itself, at her right hand. This human saved my life and my throne, she announced. He saw what none of you saw. He acted when action was needed. From this day forward, he stands as my true consort, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. High Advisor Rand stepped forward. His face was difficult to read, but there was something new in his eyes when he looked at Daniel, something that might have been respect. The human has earned his place, Rand said. We were all wrong about him. Perhaps we have been wrong about his entire species. Daniel looked out at the assembled court. at the thousands of alien faces watching him with new understanding. They had thought humanity was weak and harmless. They had thought humans were barely worth noticing. Now they would think again. The Queen reached over and took his hand in front of the entire assembly. It was a gesture that spoke louder than any words could. "The galaxy has underestimated humanity for too long," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Let this be the day that changes. Let this be the day the universe learns what we have learned, that the quietest voice often speaks the loudest truth, and the gentlest hand often holds the strongest weapon." Daniel squeezed her hand gently and smiled. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, he did not have to pretend to be something he was not. He was Daniel Cole, soldier and scholar, spy and husband, a human who had proven himself worthy of standing beside a queen. And this was only the beginning.